Module 5. The role of civil disobedience in political and social change. 1. The philosophical and ethical foundation of civil disobedience. Civil disobedience is more than breaking the law. It is a moral argument grounded in principles of justice, fairness, and human dignity. Philosophers and leaders like Henry David Thoreau, Mahatma Gandhi, and Martin Luther King Jr. argued that when laws become instruments of oppression rather than vehicles of justice, citizens have a moral obligation to disobey them. Thoreau's essay on civil disobedience, 1849, advocated for refusing to comply with laws that sustain slavery or unjust wars. Gandhian Satyagraha, rooted in nonviolence and truth, it was not merely resistance, but an appeal to the conscience of the oppressor. King's letter from Birmingham Jail, 1963, distinguished between just and unjust laws, asserting that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. This ethical foundation provides legitimacy to civil disobedience as a higher form of civic responsibility rather than criminal defiance. 2. Forms and expressions of civil disobedience. Civil disobedience can manifest in diverse forms, often shaped by cultural contexts, political environments, and the creativity of protest movements. Sit-ins and occupations, taking over spaces, for example, lunch counters during the U.S. Civil Rights Movement, boycotts, economic withdrawal to pressure systems of power, for example, Montgomery bus boycott 1955-56, marches and demonstrations, peaceful but disruptive mobilizations, for example, Salt March in India, 1930, symbolic defiance, burning identity documents, wearing banned symbols, refusing permits, digital civil disobedience, hacktivism, online petitions, mass virtual sit-ins disrupting digital platforms. 3. The political utility of civil disobedience. Civil disobedience often acts as a catalyst for systemic change, forcing states to confront contradictions between their professed ideals and lived realities. Its political utility lies in exposing hypocrisy, highlighting disparities between laws and principles of democracy, justice, or human rights, mobilizing masses. Demonstrations of civil disobedience often inspire broader participation, uniting people across class, race, or religious divides, attracting global solidarity. Media and international allies amplify the cause, creating external pressure on governments, influencing policy reform. Governments sometimes revise or repeal oppressive laws when civil disobedience becomes too costly to suppress. 4. Risks, challenges, and criticisms of civil disobedience. Despite its power, civil disobedience is not without dilemmas. State repression, arrests, police brutality, surveillance, censorship, or even massacres. For example, Tiananmen Square, 1989. Public backlash. Some view disobedience as lawlessness or a threat to social stability. Co-optation. Governments may pacify movements through token reforms without structural change. Ethical limits. Debates on whether violence can ever be justified within civil disobedience. 5. Historical and contemporary case studies. Gandhi's Salt March, 1930, India, mobilized millions against British colonial salt laws, symbolizing resistance against economic exploitation. U.S. Civil Rights Movement, 1950s-1960s, sit-ins, freedom rides, and marches challenged racial segregation and catalyzed legislative reforms. Civil Rights Act, 1964, South African anti-apartheid struggle, civil disobedience campaigns, boycotts, strikes, defiance campaigns, exposed apartheid's brutality. Hong Kong protests, 2014 and 2019, umbrella movement used civil disobedience to demand democratic reforms. Climate activism, Extinction Rebellion, 2018-present, uses mass civil disobedience to pressure governments into addressing climate change. 6. The transformative role of civil disobedience in democracies and authoritarian states. In democracies, civil disobedience tests the flexibility and inclusiveness of democratic institutions. When states allow dissent, it strengthens democracy. When suppressed, it exposes weaknesses. In authoritarian states, acts of disobedience become more dangerous but can still plant seeds of change, mobilizing underground networks or sparking revolutions. 7. Civil disobedience and the future of social movements. With technological shifts, civil disobedience has evolved. Activists now combine traditional tactics with digital tools, viral hashtags, decentralized organizing, encrypted communications to resist authoritarian control and mobilize across borders. As the 21st century faces global challenges, climate crisis, inequality, surveillance capitalism, and shrinking democratic spaces, civil disobedience remains one of the most potent instruments of last resort for oppressed peoples seeking justice.